Hello, my name is Ray Lopez. I'm your City Council representative for District 6. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our program. Today I'm very excited to have as my guest Rudy Garza, Vice President External Relations with CPS Energy, and Sarah Gatewood, Communications Specialist for SAWS. On today's show we'll be discussing CPS Energy's strategic plan, sustainability goals, and programs. We'll also be discussing some great initiatives that SAWS has committed to, including their own affordability programs, which are quite exciting. Now I'd like to welcome to the show our guest, Rudy Garza. Rudy, welcome.
Thank you for having me today, Councilman.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I've heard great things about you as you wandered your way up north from the from the southern tips of Texas, making it to San Antonio, or as when I lived down there, we used to call it going to the big city. Of course, people from Alice, Texas would say going to the big city. They're going to Corpus, but
right.
A little bit different. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing now here in San Antonio for CPS, a little bit about that role, and what you see as some of the short-term plans for that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I couldn't be happier to be here with CPS Energy. I'm coming from Corpus Christi, and so CPS Energy has given me a great opportunity to serve as their Vice President of External Relations. I'll be handling our federal, state, and local relations programs. So I've got obviously John Leal, who's our local relations manager, and I will work together. And then we've got a director up in Austin, Kathy Garcia, who also will be working as part of our team. CPS Energy is a great organization. Everything I've seen about them in the first month, I think this week marks a month that I've now been on the job, and it's drinking.
So you're no longer a rookie, right?
Well, I think folks say that you're still a rookie until you've been about 10 years with CPS Energy. So I've got a ways to go there. But it's a great organization. San Antonio and the citizens of San Antonio should be very proud of the work that the CPS Energy employees do. I've been very impressed so far.
Well, there's no doubt there's a lot of confidence in the work that they've done and the reaction that they take anytime that there's a disaster, a catastrophe, or anything happening here in San Antonio, and to be able to deliver an incredibly reliable source of energy for our patrons at a reasonable price.
Yes,
and that's what's important. I know that with all the work that you will do at the federal and the state level, San Antonio, City of San Antonio also has our Interrelations Board, Intergovernmental Relations Board. Look forward to working with you closely. I happen to chair that committee.
Okay.
And I know that as we get closer to the session, and we'll be identifying issues that we need to move forward with. And oftentimes it takes multiple agencies to go down there, getting the attention of our legislators.
Yeah, Carlos Contreras and I have, I used to be the Intergovernmental Relations Director for the City of Corpus Christi. So Carlos and I have got a great relationship. You've got a great representative in Carlos, and so he and I will certainly work well
we're certainly
together.
looking forward to partnering with you on that.
Thank you, sir.
And in the energy front, of course, there's a lot of regulation, I think, that's going to be discussed, debated, hopefully decided on correctly and in a way that it's good for municipalities, and in particular the way CPS and the City of San Antonio's relationship has grown. And I know that much of what CPS is doing relative to growth is putting on new sources of energy.
That's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about the new acquisition, the recent acquisition of that new power plant?
Yes, sir. The Rio Nogales plant is a power plant. It's a natural gas combined cycle plant located in Seguin, Texas. It is an 800 megawatt plant that is 10 years old, relatively new, very clean burning source of fuel in natural gas. And it's just part of CPS's overall strategy to take what are traditional sources of power, which is coal, natural gas, and nuclear, and kind of reinvest in itself and make them a cleaner carbon fuel source going into the future. It's part of our Vision 2020 goals to continue to rely on those traditional power sources, but to try to, in addition to that, diversify, take advantage of wind and take advantage of some of the solar projects that we've got going. And so that Rio Nogales is going to fit in nicely. It's 30 employees, which are now CPS Energy employees that work there at that power plant. The transition has been going smoothly. We've got a great team working on bringing that power plant and that operation into our fold. The strategy behind purchasing of Rio Nogales was to allow us to kind of repurpose some capital. We were considering adding some scrubbers to the Dealey units 1 and 2, and in looking at the overall picture, Mr. Beneby and the leadership team at CPS thought that may be a better use of those funds to invest in a natural gas plant and allow us to to replace an older form of fuel in the coal plants with a cleaner burning natural gas plant.
Right. Well, I remember several months ago when that decision was made public by Mr. Benavides and others. It was well received throughout the community. I believe there was about $600 million that had been allocated to the scrubbers,
right.
And not spending that money, then refocusing that to add to our portfolio of natural gas. I mean, it just makes so much sense from so many different ways, particularly from an environmental perspective. But there's another perspective, and that's the economic perspective.
Yes,
what will that do to the cost of gas and or just in general the utility bill?
Right. I think overall, if you look at, I'll go at this from a couple different perspectives.
Okay.
Right now, if you look at the fuel source for the Dealey units, we're importing coal from Wyoming and the Powder River Basin coal from Wyoming and Montana and those areas that serves as a fuel source for Dealey. You know, the Eagle Ford Shale is right down the road, right here, and that natural gas plant at Rio Nogales burns gas that will be coming from a fuel source right here in the state of Texas. So we're replacing, we were creating jobs in Montana, and we're now moving those to Texas, and overall, that's a great story.
Well, it is a great story, and it also means that we will be primary purchasers, if you will, of that resource that's just to the south of us. Also gives us an opportunity as large purchasers to have some input in how it's explored and those kinds of things. Because again, as we talk about things that are important to San Antonio's quality of life, we talk about air quality, federal regulation, and the like. So being able to be a large consumer of their product, we should be able to have a relatively good input into how that all evolves. So I think it really, from virtually every facet, it's a positive, very, very positive thing.
Thank you.
Are there any other revenue, or I should say, energy sources that are online in the near future that you see?
Yes, sir. Right now, if you look at our overall generation mix, and it's part of our Vision 2020 strategy that CPS Energy has been working on, we're looking at diversifying our portfolio in a number of ways. Right now, if you look at our generation, we're probably about 85% traditional sources of generation, which is mainly nuclear, natural gas, and coal. Then you factor in, some renewables, some solar, and some other, you factor in energy efficiency savings and demand response, and that kind of makes up our mix of our overall generation portfolio. Well, we're trying we'll still be if we reach all our goals in 2020, 77% of our generation will still be coal, natural gas, and nuclear, but it'll be cleaner sources. So we will continue to use cleaner carbon forms of fuel, but we're also adding, obviously we've announced the 40 megawatt or 30 megawatt project with Sun Edison that it will be going online at the Dos Rios site, SAWS Dos Rios site. We're continuing to try to close the deal with OCI and Nexelon on the 400 megawatt, up to 400 megawatt project that will allow us to continue to add more solar to the mix, but we're doing it in a manner that will allow us to continue to provide energy in a reliable manner and at a cost, and ultimately at a cost competitive price to our customers. So we've got a very diverse strategy on generation supply.
Well, it certainly seems that way, and I think I get an opportunity to see it, pretty close and up front, because you guys do such a wonderful job of keeping us up to date. But I think also the public is recognizing that as you diversify your portfolio, it's a very great indicator for our city, and it really puts this region kind of in an envious position, relatively speaking, in the energy market. How do you think that fares? I mean, San Antonio in particular, or South Texas in particular, relative to the rest of the energy market?
Well, it takes a diverse group of business models to provide energy. If you look at the state of Texas, we're kind of on an island down here. ERCOT is a standalone system, which is good. We're not subject to FERC regulations, and we don't have to worry about some of the issues going on in the West region and the East region. We're kind of just focused on Texas. And if you look at Texas, there are investor-owned utilities that provide service to certain areas. There are certainly co-ops that provide service to rural areas. And then you have 72 municipally owned electric utilities whose business really goes through the local, policymakers and the city council, obviously yourselves, to approve certain things that are important to our business. And so I think because of that business model allows us to kind of make decisions that impact San Antonio here locally, I think it really serves San Antonio citizens really well. It's allowed CPS Energy to really provide our product in a cost competitive manner, and really it's allowed us to mitigate risk so that our ratepayers aren't subject to some of the other things going on in the market.
Yeah, which is real important. I know that
Hugely important.
all of my constituents
Yes, sir.
call in and say, so what's that going to do to my rate?
Right,
You know, absolutely.
exactly.
And recently I read an article talking about electric vehicles,
Right.
and of course, everybody's excited about that. But then it raises the issue of, charging them up, and
Yes, sir.
where do you charge them, charging stations and all that. How do you see that playing into the San Antonio environment? And, we only have a couple of minutes left, so if you can kind of touch on that, I think the viewers would appreciate it.
A couple weeks ago, we hosted a viewing of this electric vehicle movie that really talked about the advent of the industry on the auto side. We recently signed a deal to create 120 locations of electric vehicle powering stations, and depending upon the kind of car that you choose, you can get anywhere from 20 miles to 60 miles
Right.
or whatever, depending upon the type of vehicle you have. So we're trying to create the infrastructure necessary for consumers to be able to make the choice. If they want to really go green and buy an electric vehicle in the market, then we're going to try to provide the infrastructure it takes to service that need.
Great. Well, I think all of those things really underscore the strategies and the direction that CPS is taking. We're glad to have you as a partner and here at the city, and we're looking forward to continue working with you on that.
Yeah. Thank you,
Stay
Councilman.
with us, and we'll be right back after a short break to talk to Sarah Gatewood.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, smoky.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Today, we gather to recognize the selfless decision of one of the most influential women of our time. The woman who, after having one too many drinks, chose not to drive home buzzed. Here today to honor Rachel is the family whose lives she spared.
Abandoned and lost. From the dark, cold streets of the city to a cage in the local shelter, to heaven, your lap.
Welcome back to our program. I'm your host, District 6 Councilman Ray Lopez. We're now going to interview and talk with Sarah Gatewood from SAWS. then I really look forward to this discussion because I think there's a lot of really cool things happening at SAWS. You know, we've had an opportunity to go out into the public, knock on doors, talk about some of the programs that SAWS is offering, and the excitement is just rampant. And people they want more and more. So once you set a standard, you got to know that you got to keep it up. So people are just expecting it, and they certainly expect that, and know that SAWS is always going to be there. What are some of the projects that you guys are working on out at SAWS that would be of interest to our public here?
Well, we have a lot of very exciting projects coming in the next few years that people may not know too much about yet. Just a few weeks ago, we actually broke ground on our H264 program. So we are drilling those wells right now, and we'll be building that plant beginning next year to bring a new source of water for San Antonio. So this will be different from the Edwards Aquifer, but you won't taste the difference when you drink it. We'll be taking salty water and taking all the salt and minerals out and making it taste and look just like Edwards water, and bringing that to San Antonio for our customers to enjoy. So that will come online in 2016, and that will bring 10 million gallons a day at first, but up to 25 million gallons a day by 2026 that no one else is using right now. So that's one really exciting thing that we're excited about. But we also have more water coming online even sooner. We're bringing in water from the west, from Gonzales County, in by 2013 actually. So just next year we'll start getting this water. And the great thing about this one is that we are partnering with the H264 Local Government Corporation to not only buy water from them, but actually rent space in their pipeline instead of having to build our own. So that's a great way to save our customers and their customers money. So we're not having to build, a pipeline of miles and miles. We're actually using space in theirs that's not being used. So that's a great way to work with our neighbors to everybody's benefit to bring in new water for San Antonio.
And of all the water that you're talking about there, relatively speaking to our consumption, about how much is there going to be supplementing our current consumption, which all comes from the aquifer, I guess, today?
A big portion of it
portion of
does,
it.
yes. And this will help either reduce our need for some of those Edwards water or help our city continue to grow.
Right.
So it will be total, each of them will be more than 10 million gallons a day for the city. So, we're using more than that now total, but it'll be a great help.
So it's a great supplement.
It's a great supplement, and it really helps us continue to grow and reduce our use of just Edwards water.
Well, that's right, and I think everybody recognizes that is incredibly sensitive to it. As a matter of fact, for several cycles now, the city has positively approved a 1/8 of a cent sales tax, so we can continue to buy land and figure out ways to protect that aquifer. Typically always referred to as our only source of drinking water. But I know that SAWS is trying to make a change there to have us a diversified water portfolio, and that's smart and that's important because growth is coming.
It is, and the Edwards will always be a big part of our water
Without
supply,
a doubt.
but we need to start now to look for those other opportunities as well.
No, I couldn't agree more, and I know that the folks in particularly District 6, when I get out and talk to them about the various projects that are happening, they're very concerned about the reliability of water as well as the rates that we're charging. And while we get into discussions about rates and stuff, they also take a while to kind of start to realize that you guys do more than just provide water when you turn on the tap. You actually take that water once we consume it and use it and also move it out. Exactly. And without that piece of it, we'd really have some problems. I know that there's been a lot of movement to try to replenish, replace, the drainage issues and things of that nature. You want to talk a little bit about that and how important that might be?
Well, like you said, one of the biggest things that we have to do on the wastewater side is keep that infrastructure in the best shape that we can to prevent sewer spills. So we're investing over $100 million every year to not just put in new pipes, but to replace those older pipes, to bring in more growth as well, and some areas that need some revitalization. So, for example, we have a very large sewer project on the south side. It travels from west to east throughout the whole south side, picking up all of that wastewater and taking it to our treatment plant. And that's going to replace some older infrastructure, but also allow for more growth on the south side of San Antonio. So we're trying to hit it from all angles, not
Right.
just the new but the old, but then also keep our wastewater treatment plants in the best shape possible too. Our Dos Rios Water Recycling Center is one of the greatest probably in the state. It is very large, but it's also at the point now where we need to do some upgrades. So this year we're starting to do a lot of those upgrades too to keep it in the best shape possible.
Right. No, I think everybody realizes that you guys are doing a good job, and certainly our water rates, when you compare them to virtually any other city of our size, we're doing pretty good.
We're trying hard.
Yeah, we're trying real hard, and I know that it does take investment, and it does take us being able to manage that investment smartly well into the future. But then there's also those folks that have issues with being able to afford their bills today, and I know that last month, as a matter of fact, I was out block walking with a bunch of folks from your organization to let people know about affordability programs. And again, those are kind of really well received. They were surprised that we were actually knocking on their door, trying to let them know about the progress and the programs that were there. You want to talk a little bit about some of those affordability programs, and we'll get a little bit deeper into that.
Sure, we have a number of different programs to help people afford those water and wastewater bills when they come in. Some of the basic ones are aimed at some of those publics that we know need help the most. We have some for seniors and for disabled that helps waive late fees when they have payments that are past due, because we just need to pay for the service. So we're able to waive those late fees and give them the time that they need to pay those bills. We also have affordability programs that are aimed to help people that need a little extra help every now and then to meet those bills. So we have programs, and a lot of those are based on not just on your income, but your family size and where you are in the city and what kind of help you really need. So we have some programs that are run just through SAWS, some that we partner with the city on, and to try to hit every angle to make sure people can pay their bills.
Well, and how do folks go about applying for that?
The easiest way is if you have a question to call us at 704-SAWS. We have a staff of ladies that can help walk you through the process and help you find what programs you might be eligible for. But you can also go to our website, www.saws.org, and we have on there our affordability programs, and a lot of those applications are already online that you can fill out too. But if you ever have a question, give us a call, because they can really help talk through what your situation is and see what we can do to help.
Great. Well, you guys have always been there for the community, and I know they appreciate that. Kind of shifting gears just a little bit, I know recently we went into stage 1, and because everybody kind of goes, oh my God, what does that mean? And when's stage 2 coming in? How do we, make sure that next year we don't get into stage 1? Talk a little bit about how, what triggers stage 1 and what we do differently perhaps, and what are maybe some things that we should do prior to stage 1. To keep us from going into stage 1 like we unfortunately have to do right about this time every year.
Sure. Well, there's a couple of different factors that kind of influence, but the trigger for stage 1 is that J17 Edwards Aquifer monitoring well. And the way our city ordinance is structured, when that hits certain levels, it triggers different stages of drought restrictions. And so the first one is stage 1, which is triggered at 660 feet. And this year, we're still recovering from the terrible drought that we had last year. So while we were able to come out of stage 1 in March sometime, we still hadn't gotten all that rain caught up. We had a great winter, a lot of rain that helped bring us up, but we're still not starting out in the greatest spot. So unfortunately, we dropped back into stage 1 in April. But also there are farmers irrigating, and they're also pulling water from the Edwards Aquifer, so that also can impact the aquifer level during the springtime in addition to rainfall. So right now we're just at stage 1. Hopefully we'll keep getting some rain and we won't have to go any further, but if so, we've all been there and we know it's not too difficult. The biggest thing that people have to deal with is restrictions on when you can use your sprinkler or sprinkler systems outdoors.
Right.
In stage 1, we're down to 1 day a week on your designated day. Your day is determined by the last number of your street address. And hopefully nobody changed their settings from all of 2011 when we were in drought restrictions, but on your day anytime before 10 a.m. or after 8 p.m.
Yeah, what I have found, and my wife is probably a much better manager of that than I am, but she actually is quite consistent with the watering, and even after we get out of stage 1 or whatever stage we happen to be in, she continues doing that, and quite honestly, the lawns can survive. They are scheduled to where if you do it in those cycles at the times that you're allocated, you can continue to have a nice green lawn. Now, with how that affects me is my grass doesn't grow quite as fast, and I don't have to cut as often, but
that's not too bad.
That's not such a bad deal. Yeah. Yeah. You talked a minute ago, and I know we're getting ready to wrap up here, but if you can just touch a little bit on, the lakes in the area have really, I mean, they're all incredibly low. I mean, 40, 50 feet low at Medina, for example. Is that an indicator of what's happening within the aquifer as well? I mean, those are surface lakes, and obviously the aquifer, I mean, another very large pool of water. I mean, is that a good indicator that says if the lakes are low, the aquifer is low? Or how does that work?
Not necessarily, but it is an indicator of how our whole region is doing. Our lakes take a little longer to recover than the aquifer does. The Edwards Aquifer, because it is a limestone aquifer, recovers very quickly, and that's why we can see the level change so quickly when we have rain, whereas it takes a little longer for our lakes and streams to recover. So, like, as you mentioned, the Medina Lake is very low. It has a very narrow draining bed too, so we have to get rain in the right area for that lake to get higher. But the Edwards has a very large recharge zone, so that's why we're able to see recovery a little more quickly there than we might in some of the lakes. And it helps us all out, since that's what we're using right now for most of our drinking water.
I'd like to invite you to come back at a later date and talk a little bit more about that, and how maybe we can even get some folks from the Edwards to come down. And how does the aquifer recharge itself and all those kinds of things? I learned some things last week about watersheds and all kinds of, just really things that Mother Nature has put in place to help some of those things. So maybe that's a good topic for another discussion, because water is critically important to our region, as you said, about growth and just our quality of life. So thank you very much for sharing some time with us, and thank you for tuning in. I'd like to once again thank my guests for taking the time to provide us with such great information about our city's utility companies. I look forward to the upcoming shows, and until next time, I'm your City Councilman Ray Lopez, and thank you, San Antonio.
Abandoned and lost. From the dark, cold streets of the city to a cage in the local shelter, to heaven, your lap.
Oye, Luis, ¿sabías que eres el plan de Elmo?
¿Tu plan?
Sí, la mami de Elmo dijo que si Elmo se enferma y no puede ir a la escuela, el plan es que Elmo se quede en casa con Luis y María.
Así es, ya tenemos ese plan.
¡Genial!
Es difícil predecir cuándo su niño estará muy enfermo para ir a la escuela. Así es que tenga un plan para que su niño se quede en casa hasta mejorarse.
Luis es el plan porque a Elmo cuidará. Luis es el plan porque a Elmo cuidará.
Para obtener más información sobre cómo prevenir la gripe, visite flu.gov.
The magical thing about using energy wisely is that anyone can do it. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off computers and game systems when not in use. Make a change and we can really fly. Grab a grown-up and go online to energy.gov/kids.
Cuando la vida es así de dura, graduarse puede ser aún más duro, pero tú puedes ayudar a José y a los estudiantes en tu comunidad a sobreponerse visitando boostup.org.
Only you can prevent wildfires.